Hey everyone, this is Erica Studdard, and for Project 1, I chose the case Sunshine Nunnery versus Scrub Receptionist Biz, and Awesome Toyota. And for my jurisdiction, I chose Illinois. So, for the facts. Sammy Scrub was hired to be a detailer at Awesome Toyota. Awesome Toyota is a general partnership that's run by the Biz brothers. Well, one day Scrub asked another employee, Rachel, for the keys to a Prius that the dealership uses as a loaner vehicle for customers whenever they come in to get any sort of maintenance done. Well, he wanted the keys to the Prius so that he could use it during his 30-minute lunch break. She wound up giving him the keys, and she said just not to tell anyone, that she thought that it would be okay. Well, while he was out, he hit a bus full of nuns and orphans, and all the nuns and orphans suffered injuries to their necks and their backs. So, is Awesome liable for Scrub's actions? And are the Biz brothers liable for Scrub's actions? So, according to McNerney versus Alamoradov, under the doctrine of respondeat superior, a principal or employer can be held liable for the acts committed by an agent or employee acting within the scope of his agency or employment. So according to this case, an employer is only liable if the act was committed by the employee while he was within the scope of his employment. So this brings up the question of whether or not Scrub was acting within the scope of his employment when he hit the bus full of nuns and orphans. So to answer that, I've got the restatement of agencies requirements coming up. So Rodman versus CSX Intermodals Incorporated says, as a general rule, all three criteria of Section 228 must be met in order to conclude that an employee was acting within the scope of his employment. So as it states, all three of the criteria has to be met, and we are about to look at those three criteria right now. So it says, the restatement of agency, section 228, says conduct of a servant is within the scope of employment if and only if it is of the kind he is employed to perform. Well, was Scrub employed to take that car? No. It occurs substantially within the authorized time and space limits. Whenever he took the car, was he within the time of his employment? No, he had clocked out. Is it actuated, at least in part, by a purpose to serve the master? No. Scrub was out on his own accord doing whatever his heart desired during his lunch break, so it did not have anything to do with anything the master needed. So, section 2 of this just kind of basically knocks back at what everything that I just said. But it says conduct of a servant is not within the scope of employment if it is different in kind from that authorized, far beyond the authorized time or space limits, or too little actuated by a purpose to serve the master. So basically, according to the restatement of agency, section 228, Scrub was not acting within the scope of his employment whenever the accident occurred. So Prince versus Atchison says, it's well settled that an employer is not to be held vicariously liable for injuries caused by an employee when that employee is engaged in a frolic of his own, as he is considered at that time to be outside of the scope of employment. So Prince basically reiterates the restatement of agency's requirements that considers an employee to be acting within the scope of his employment. And as I mentioned before, he was not acting within the scope of his employment. And right here, he was engaged in a frolic of his own. He was on his own lunch break, on his own time. He had clocked out. So yeah, he was not acting within the scope of his employment. So the conclusion. Awesome is not liable for Scrub's actions, considering everything that was said in the cases before. And the Biz brothers are not liable for Scrubb's actions either, because he was not acting within the scope of his employment whenever the accident occurred.